Okay, I thought I'd do a little video on proper knives for a plate type head. First of all, your knives have to have these slots in them. You cannot run this type of head without this type of knife. These are still available in England. This is not a Wadkin knife, and it will be square on the ends. You need to grind, if you want to use a rabbet to cut, a 10-degree slope on that end. Okay, just as a relief cut. Okay, and otherwise you won't be able to do rabbets. Now, the slots fit onto the jack adjustment screw here, which has got a little thing here, and you drop the knife onto those slots. And those slots do a couple of things. They don't let that knife fly out of the head if the plate becomes loose. The plate is also pinned, so it can't slide. The one thing you will see, and I advise you never to run the machine like this, is people putting standard knives in front of those jack screws and using the front, obviously. That doesn't hold the knife from slipping out, and this is never to be done. The centrifugal forces of this head exert such massive loads that that knife will fall out, and I just don't want anybody to get hurt. So do not install knives without slots, okay, or in front of the slot. Make sure you get the proper knives. They are available. They are expensive, but they are made of 18% tungsten. They're excellent quality, and you will have to grind one end at this end. And when you set up your knife there, you want it a few, 1 or 2 thou this way of the head, so that you can use this ledge as a rabbet if you want to do rabbeting. Thank you. Okay, so the knife is in. We've got the nuts hand tight. I want to show you something here. Okay, this table and that head, the edge of that head, are identical. There may be a thou less on the head. Okay, so when you're setting the edge knife that I told you that if you want to do rabbets, you can see that this actually moves. So all you really want is just a slight bit of forward clearance, so that that edge of that knife clears the rabbet and doesn't snag on that table. So you just, I'm going to set probably less than that, okay, maybe a thou or something. But I'm just going to do it by feel, and I only do one knife. The other one I'll push in so I don't get any. It's a one knife cut for that kind of thing. It's just really for clearance. Okay. The other thing is here's your jack screws, and this is how you adjust your knife up and down. Now, you want to lower your knife into position, not raise it, because if you raise your knife in position, your knife can still slide outwards. When you lower the knife into position, it takes all the slack out of that knife, and any centrifugal force won't just take up the lash in that. And that will guarantee that if your knives move, well, they won't move because the back of the slot is held in the right position. So remember, when you're setting your knives, raise above, take lash out, and then come down to your mark. And that's I think the best way to set those so that there's no lash inside that slot, because there's a bit of play in that slot. Oh, at least 10 to 15 thou. Thanks. Okay, so how far out of the head should a joiner knife be? How far should the actual projection of that knife be in its cutting circle from this cutting circle? And here's what I like to do. Obviously, heads have this part here, which is a chip breaker. Slotted grooves with gib knives usually have those, and that creates the chip breaker. The closer you would have that would just be the same as hand tools, like hand planes. The closer you're going to get a better finish, but you're not going to be able to take heavy cuts. So what I like to do, I like controlled cuts. We're not milling spruce lumber, but if we were, we would add more projection. So what I want you to look at is, see the heel of that knife? The heel of that knife, okay? I just want that to just be above by maybe a 1/16 at the most. 32nd is probably better ideal. So that's the projection. Once that projection is set here, I will then zero the rear table to that height projection and set my gauge to 0. Then I can always use the back table at 0 to always set the height of my knife. That way I'll never have to adjust my rollers or my pressure bars, because I now have an index for my cutting circle which relates to all those things. So that's just that's my opinion of where those knives should be set to be at the safest. It's also more supportive. You're not sticking out. You can go heavier if you need more aggression, but I'm not going to advise that. Thank you. Knife setting tools. We're actually built for setting these knives, and this is the Wadkin knife setting gauge. It was actually sold to Powermatic in the United States, and you can find this very apparatus on eBay with Powermatic in the side. It's actually a Wadkin design from the 40s. How it works is there's a little plunger here which moves a gauge, and the markings on there, I don't know if you can actually make them out very clear, but they're 1/1000 of an inch, and it's very easy. You simply set it on the table and you rotate the knife until that reaches 0. It's a very accurate gauge. If you do happen to have one of these types of heads, it's awesome. It also will set stuff sideways. Okay, and what's the most fantastic is this sits inside of a planer and measures planer knives this way as well. So it's actually a brilliant, very simple device that is extremely accurate. The only other thing I would advise if you didn't have that is anybody, of course, should have a dial gauge that reads within 1/1000 of an inch, and you could read your knives off of here. Now, what I tend to do on reading knives on heads like that is you need to read top dead center. And so what we do is I set my indicator so that the actual base edge of the indicator is in line with that steel lip. So no matter where I place it on the head, it is reading top dead center, which is important to the accuracy of the cutting circle. So anyway, that's the devices I recommend someone should have. These are fairly inexpensive. This one actually is a nice one, but you can get a Chinese one, which is certainly appropriate for setting knives.